welcome to the podcast. You are one of the youngest AWS heroes, so that's an achievement. So I'm super excited to welcome you on this podcast. Welcome again.
Thank you, Michael. Thanks for invite.
Philip, we are going to talk about how can one become an AWS hero, how can people join the community, and for recruiters, we can also discuss a bit more the technical stuff. You know, you specialize in serverless, so I know that a lot of recruiters are interested in what serverless is, how to find serverless professionals, etc. But before we dive deeper, why don't you tell us how can someone become an AWS hero? Not the youngest one, because you already have this, but just in general, like what does it take? I mean, what does it even mean, AWS hero?
Well, AWS Euros are, there's not really a strict definition of what AWS Euro means. That's on purpose. So AWS Euro is basically someone who is recognized by AWS by their achievements and big impact on the community, either global community or local community. And yeah, simply, usually it's, influencers, people who are active, sharing the thoughts, ideas, blog posts, organizing meetups and stuff like that. So it's about the impact on the community.
Awesome. And your impact is significant because you started in very early age. You started when you were 11 years old in the IT world. And my son is also 11 years old now. So I'm especially interested and curious, like how can someone even start coding or doing something in IT as an 11 years old?
Yeah, that's a good question. I started because I wanted to solve a problem. I wanted to do some business case, let's say. I was doing these websites on these drag and drop, low code, no code platforms. And in 1 or 2 years, it wasn't enough for me. I wanted to customize it more. So I started diving deeper. And nowadays, there are so many resources in local languages, in English, so everyone can learn from videos and everything. And plus, AI can help a lot nowadays.
Hmm.
So first of all, it must be about the fact that you want to create something, some product, and solve some problem. And then eventually, as it happened to me, you start diving deeper into the technicalities and you start appreciating the technology. And yeah, later on in my career, I mean, later on, yeah, when I was like 18, I started building some project on AWS. And why was that? It was just because of money. As a student, I didn't have any money, so I wanted to do serverless because, well, it was almost for free, basically, as opposed to renting a server. So, being curious, learning, that helps, and eventually you can become AWS Euro or whatever new technology is.
Yeah, 10 years later, right?
Yeah,
So
exactly.
that's awesome. And often people see this, not just this specifically, but success in general, they see as overnight, success, like, oh, wow, someone just, got to a certain stage. But what you just mentioned is really interesting because you became the AWS hero after 12 or 13 years in IT, right? Even though you were doing something, while studying, while being at school, but still it was 12 years, 12 years later. And I guess you were also active in the community, or you are now at least. So can you tell us a bit more about the AWS community in the Czech Republic, in Slovakia, or in the Central Europe region?
Yeah, it's always good to meet other folks who are solving the same problems and see that you're not alone. And that's why we have meetups in tech industry. So there are AWS user groups in Prague and Bratislava and Vienna, which are regularly or sometimes irregularly organizing meetups. And then we are at Purple Technology organizing serverless meetups, mostly in Brno, but sometimes we visit some other cities. And so that's about the Czech community. In terms of the global community, there is this program by AWS called AWS Community Builders, which is aggregating people who are writing about AWS, recording video about AWS, and simply sharing it with the community and trying to help the people. Basically, that's how I started. I joined the community builder program when it was created, basically, and there's so many people who you can collaborate with and ask questions. That's the thing. You get access directly to AWS teams. You can see things which are not public yet and stuff like that, so you can really be part of the community. And then in Czech Republic there was this conference last year. 2023 was the first one, called AWS Cloud Day Prague, which was this conference. There was like 1,400 people, so it was quite big in Prague, and basically everybody from the Czech AWS scene was there, so that was great. So there's many opportunities how to connect with the people and learn more, either locally or globally.
Awesome, awesome. What about some of these community channels like Slack or Discord? Is this still a thing?
Oh yeah, I mean, a lot communities are either on Slack or on Discord. For example, AWS User Group Prague has a Discord. Sorry, Slack.
Slack?
They have
Okay.
Slack, which you can join, and you can ask question other people. You can see what events are coming up and stuff like that. So definitely recommend joining there, even if you are from some country around, and it's in English. And of course, then community builders are having Slack, CDK community, and yeah, there's many of them.
Awesome. And is there any public calendar of these events? You mentioned the conference, and there are some meetups. Is there any calendar that people who are working in the community can just look at and prepare for the upcoming events?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't recall being there in a like global calendar. So yeah, you need to search. There are community days. That's another thing. There is one in Poland, Germany, and other countries. For example, I've been to Turkey Community Day. It's a great event. I can really recommend. And but yeah, I don't think there's like a public schedule. But yeah, if you search on meetup.com or something like that, you will definitely search some event around you.
Makes sense. Or maybe Eventbrite also. So
Yeah.
it's important to kind of be active in the community, as you said. Also in Czech Republic, within those 1,400 people, pretty much everyone who is active in the AWS Cloud group was there. Awesome, wonderful, cool. So why don't we shift gears and explain what does the serverless actually mean? We are talking about cloud. We are talking about what do you specialize in, which is the serverless technology. But a lot of people may not even know what the difference between the standard cloud and the serverless cloud or the serverless technology could be. So how would you explain it to my 11-year-old son?
Oh yeah, that's gonna be a tough one. Basically, serverless is just an evolution of cloud. It's like a next level. I don't know if I could explain it to 11-year-old, but 11-year-old, I would tell him like it's gonna cost you nothing. That's the important part for you. No parents' credit card required. But for the companies, in general, using cloud, serverless is basically just a password. So it means a good auto scaling, and ideally, it means scaling back to zero. So if nobody's using your application or part of your application, you pay nothing. So when you're using Lambda function, which is like the core compute thing, like the thing where you are putting your code, this can scale up to thousands or tens of thousands requests a second to back to zero, and then you pay nothing. So it's all about this, about having a dynamic costs and only paying really for what you use.
Awesome, awesome. So in the good old days, there were servers somewhere in the data center. Each company had their own data center. But then they migrated to cloud, but in the cloud they still had those servers which they kind of purchased, right? The EC2 servers or whatever, this computing power. And now the next evolution is no cloud computing. It's just the functions that are being executed. Like, do I
Yeah,
get it right?
the problem with servers in general is that, any server can be hacked. So if you're managing a server, you need to, make sure that you're updating regularly. And this takes a lot of time. This is the whole team in the company, you know. And cloud is all about outsourcing all these hassles to the cloud provider and just using the service to deliver the added business value. So serverless is the mainly evolution of this, that you don't really have to worry about the cloud and security that much, like is gonna somebody hack my server and stuff like that, because AWS is the one who is facing all these threats, and you're just then utilizing the service you need, like Lambda or SQS S3. I mean, the thing is that the serverless services has been here even before the term serverless existed. So that's just a buzzword, It's about just having a service that you can use, having some API, and the cloud provider takes care about the hustle.
Awesome. Well, this is actually a nice bridge to the fintech industry that you are working in, because generally, from what I recall years ago, the financial companies, they were not using cloud because it was not very secure, right? Like a bank, for example. Um, but now, is my assumption right that thanks to those serverless technologies, is it safer also for fintech companies to use cloud? Is it also the reason why you in your company use serverless? Is it the security reason?
Yeah, I mean, the security of the cloud is, you know, it's an interesting topic because the cloud itself is secure. I mean, one of the brightest minds are working on that. It's just about that the regulator is not able to, comprehend what cloud is and how it works and stuff like that. They just know that you have your own data center, and they have their own papers and documentation how to approach that, but they didn't have anything like that for cloud. So nowadays the cloud providers are going, towards these regulators and trying to, provide them with all the necessary documentations and proofs. So it's getting easier even for the regulated companies in the end.
Nice.
So, luckily for us, we directly are not part of any regulation, so it was not that big of a problem for us. But even some other parts of our holding company, they were trying to implement like PCI DSS and stuff like that, which is the standard security standard for payment cards processing. And yeah, we were able to address that. So I believe things are getting better, and it's mostly about the people, not the technology.
Wonderful. I mean, that is clearly bright future for the cloud. What are some other reasons that you see impacting the decision whether to migrate to cloud or not? Because there are lots of companies out there that don't use cloud, right? So security could be one of them. What are some of the other reasons that you've seen in other companies?
Yeah, well, when you are big enough, and do the math, it can really result that it's just a no-brainer to build your own data center. But to be honest, how many companies are like that? Not that much. Uh, so for most of the companies, it makes sense to be in the cloud. In terms of the serverless, for example, serverless is good for fast-growing companies or companies with variable load and stuff like that. So if your company is stagnating or like keeping their user base and not really growing, then it might make sense to switch to classic servers. So it's all about these variables, like how big you are, how fast are you growing, and also how are you able to hire the professionals to eventually take care about your own data centers or servers and stuff like that, because nowadays it's super hard to get someone like that.
Hmm. And it's actually good that you mention the hiring aspect of it, because a lot of people listening to this podcast or watching on YouTube, they may be recruiters looking for cloud engineers. So you are the serverless, expert. What are some other roles that you've seen either in your company or other companies? I mean, the cloud engineer could be one. What are some other similar roles within the department?
Yeah, I mean, um, the thing is that, I'm saying that I'm like serverless architect. In the end, it means I'm a solutions architect, which means the guy who knows, all the services on AWS and is able to, put together a solution and eventually explain it to developers and stuff like that. Then of course you have classic, as they call it nowadays, DevOps people, but it's in the end it's just the operations department, which is like managing all these Kubernetes clusters, containers and stuff like that, like these really ops guys, I would say. And of course, then there is a breed of called serverless engineer, which is or serverless developer, which is very rare. And usually you will not get one. You need to create one in-house in your company. Uh, it's the combination of developer and solutions architect, basically, something between that they're able to understand AWS services and how to build an application with that and actually go and build an application in their everyday work. Um, and of course, then you have security experts, on the cloud, because there are many security experts who are experts on like general security, which is like classic server security. But cloud has many of these aspects where, it's not a classic security, it's something else. You need to know the cloud and understand how the apps are developed. So that's also a very promising and interesting position, I would say. Some people might call it oh, 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 I forgot how it's called. Like the uh,
Platform engineer?
DevSecOps,
Mhm.
DevSecOps. Yeah, sorry. And yeah, so those are the roles around the cloud. It really can be variable. Yeah, of course. You have platform engineers, which is like I'm not really sure. There are some definitions, but many people understand it differently. But it can be people who are combination of developer and solutions architect, and more on the solutions architect side, let's say, like me. Uh, I consider myself being a developer, but let's say I'm more focused on the AWS aspect of stuff. So yeah, those are the positions.
All of these little nuances, I've also learned the difference between DevSecOps and SecDevOps. It's based on what do they kind of within the organization, what do they put priority on? What's the first part of it? Like really crazy, isn't
Exactly.
it? So that's just
Yeah, the
unbelievable.
thing is, it's so abstract, so complex. So even giving the position a name can be
Mhm.
sometimes very complicated to, make something that everybody can understand.
Yeah, that's true. And we're kind of talking about AWS cloud, yet there are some of the other cloud providers, right? Microsoft or Google has their own clouds. So, based on your experience, do you see people transitioning from one cloud to the other, or do you see it rather as, I am a certified AWS cloud engineer, so I'll stick with this cloud for the next 10 years?
Well, it depends. There are many companies who are trying to spread across the clouds, like consulting companies. So people learn all the different clouds. But usually it's like they know the other clouds, but are just experts on one cloud because, it's such a big domain that you're not able to really be expert on everything. I mean, AWS itself has like 250 services, like all these different things you can do. Um, so there are even specializations inside AWS, on these services, groups of services. So um, there are people who are trying to cover all the clouds, but it's like with everything. You can be expert on multiple clouds, but you're not going to be like, you're not going to have any deep dive knowledge, let's say. So it's a trade-off.
Yeah, well, it's really crazy. I remember when we were using AWS 10 years ago, 12 years ago in our startup, there were not that many solutions within AWS. And I recall this menu that was as a little pop-up. It was always expanding every month. And then at some point they removed this menu because it was just way too many services. They didn't fit in the menu anymore. And now you say 250. So I guess they just have a search bar now
Yeah,
without
exactly.
the list. It's just crazy
Yeah, I mean,
how
there are many services, and some of them might not be used that much often. There's like this, I think it's called like AWS ground station or something. Like, you can connect to your satellite on the orbit if you need. but there's not many companies do that.
Wonderful. Well, at least they are really innovative, right? And offer these services. That's pretty awesome. And it's interesting that you mentioned that some people only specialize in certain aspects of AWS Cloud. So it's just really interesting to see how people can specialize in different aspects, right? Because some people may think that AWS, I mean, DevOps is already a specialization, right? But it may not be. What we say kind of now is that AWS could be a specialization, AWS DevOps or AWS Cloud, but it still may not be. You kind of suggest that people also niche down even further to, I don't know, database administration on AWS Cloud. So
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
just a great point.
There are many services. So there's, for example, machine learning services. So you can be ML ops focused, that you're focusing on how the operations in the cloud around the AI models work. You can be expert on developing classic apps with having an API front end, stuff like that. And, many different areas. There is video processing, there is security, so many stuff.
Oh, well, wonderful. All right, cool. So, with this being said, do you have any kind of last advice for people who are kind of struggling finding the right IT professionals, the right cloud engineers? The listeners of this podcast may be technical recruiters, as I mentioned, so they may be a bit overwhelmed with all of this terminology still. MLOps, DevSecOps, SecDevOps, and whatnot, and they are supposed to find IT professionals, whether full time or consultants. Like, have you thought, or do you have any kind of advice for them, like what they can do to find the right professionals?
Well, it's hard to find them because there's not many of them, right? So for example, we at Purple, we created our thing called Purple Academy, where we were breeding our own serverless developers from juniors, so there are these options. And in terms of finding the senior professional joining your company, I would say it's like the classic thing, offer them a good work environment, modern technologies, good paycheck, and stuff like that. So other than that, I don't really have any special recipe. But as in tech, it's like if your company has some credit in the community, which is usually made by doing meetups, writing articles, having influencers like heroes, community builders in your company, and showing them off to the community, and basically contributing to the community, that can always help.
That's a great advice. Contributing to the community, that's very important these days. Now when AI is slowly taking over the content production and recording videos, I guess it's more and more important to meet face to face and build the relationships with the community members. Awesome,
Exactly.
great. Well, thanks for your insights and knowledge. Where can people connect with you if they would like to connect or learn from you a bit more?
Yeah, definitely add me on LinkedIn or follow me on X, or as it used to be called,
Mhm.
Twitter. And definitely, yeah, just text me a message and we can get in touch.
Awesome. I'll include the LinkedIn link in the show notes. Wonderful. Thanks for joining. It was very nice speaking with you. So see you soon.
Thanks for having me, Michael. Take care.